The ballroom looked like a PowerPoint slide came to life. Everything gleamed, LED-lit walls cycling through soft blues and greens, floating floral centerpieces, servers weaving silently with trays of shrimp spoons and wine flutes. A soft jazz trio played near the stage, trying to sound casual, while the tension of valuation and ego buzzed underneath it all. We were celebrating the merger. The merger that was going to revolutionize clean modular energy, and according to the press packet, was spearheaded by bold thinkers and new visionaries. I stood near the back heels, pinching, holding a glass of Prosecco I didn't ask for. The CEO, Leonard Wexler, tapped the mic with 2 fingers and beamed like he was about to crown a pageant winner. To the architects of progress, he said to the dreamers who built Project Aurelio from vision to reality, Ethan, Marlowe, Brielle, stand up. Will you chairs scraped? Applause surged. Someone behind me let out a whistle. Cameras flashed. I stayed seated. No one noticed. Brielle caught my eye from across the table. She raised her glass lips, pressed in a knowing smile. Of course, we're all part of it in our own way, she said, as if that absolved everything. I clinked glasses with no one and drank too quickly. The bubbles hit hard, too sharp. During dessert, while a violinist wandered between tables, someone from Legal Rohan, I think, approached me discreetly, voice low. Hey, just a heads up. Some bonuses are being restructured due to fiscal alignment pre-merger. Yours is deferred to Q4. Should all be resolved by then. Right? I said. Of course. I must have smiled. I hope I did. That's what they expect, isn't it, quiet brilliance? Gratitude for crumbs. But I couldn't hear anything after that. Not the music, not the speeches, not the too loud laugh from Ethan as he made some joke about synergy over souffle. My ears hummed like static. They'd shaved my name off the celebration. Now they were shaving off my reward, and Brielle was smiling like this was strategy, not theft. I turned my gaze to the looping presentation behind the stage. Charts, smiling interns, the converter spinning in 3D. I watched it rotate layer by layer until it reached the core. And in that moment, I knew exactly where to start looking. The apartment was silent when I got home, except for the soft whir of my air purifier and the ticking of the analog clock I kept over my desk, a gift from my father who believed every engineer should fear wasted time more than failure. I kicked off my shoes, still half in that ballroom, still tasting the Prosecco's bitterness in the back of my throat. I sat down, pulled out my laptop, and opened the internal development dashboard. Habit, mostly. I'd been checking the Project Aurelio entries every week for a year, tracking changes, uploading schematics, responding to junior engineers' questions, adding annotations in the margins so no one would get lost in my firmware logic. But tonight, the tags were different. I blinked, refreshed. The project was still there. The converter files, the performance logs, the architecture flowcharts, all intact. Except my name wasn't. I scrolled through the patent attribution list. Inventors E. Salazar T. Quimby, and of course B. Maddox, no C. Navarro. I opened the commit history in our internal versioning tool. Usually I could find my initials next to most of the entries, CN314, CN892. Gone. All of them. I checked Slack next. The brainstorm thread I started back in April was there, Thermal Stability Model V2.1, but my handle had been replaced with deactivated to user 043. They hadn't just sidelined me, they deleted me. I opened a ticket with legal and added a note to internal IP compliance. 30 minutes later, someone from Legal No Name, just Legal Ops Team, replied, all inventor attributions and documentation fall under managerial discretion per section 3.4a. Please consult with your department head for clarification. I stared at the message, read it again. Then once more slower, like I could decode something else from the spaces between words. Nothing. Later that night, while heating up leftovers, I no longer had an appetite for my phone buzzed. Company-wide press release. A glowing profile of Brielle Maddox and her visionary junior team revolutionizing the future of modular energy. There was a photo of the converter, a quote from Brielle, and no mention of me, not even once. I walked to the window and stared out over the city, watching the lights flicker below like signals I couldn't yet read. I opened my drawer, pulled out the spiral notebook I hadn't touched since grad school, and flipped to a clean page. I used to think being indispensable meant I was safe. At 2:12 a.m. on a Sunday last November, I was sitting cross-legged on the cold floor of Lab B, soldering a misaligned voltage sensor while eating peanut butter crackers I found in a vending machine. Everyone else had gone home after demo day. I stayed behind because the prototype had thrown an error on the final cycle, and I didn't trust anyone else to fix it without frying the capacitor. 2 weeks before that, I'd missed my mother's funeral. I watched the live stream from the break room earbuds in half, listening to my cousin recite a prayer while I finished stabilizing the converter's fail-safe loop. My team never knew, or maybe they did. No one asked. I trained 3 interns that year. One of them thought ohm was an abbreviation. Another once labeled a wire thingy on a design diagram. I stayed late covered for them, sent follow-up emails on their behalf. I didn't do it for praise. I did it because I believed we were building something that mattered. When I knocked on Brielle's door that afternoon, I was calm, measured. I asked about the press release, the missing attribution, the bonus. She smiled. That same CEO-approved smile she used when shaking hands at conferences. "Celia," she said, "I assumed you'd prefer to stay out of the spotlight. You're not the type who needs it. You're the kind that builds, not brags." I nodded slowly, as if I understood, as if I agreed. Then I thanked her for her time turned and walked back to my desk like nothing had cracked. But that night, I sat in my apartment with the lights off, holding the printout of the patent, filing like it was someone else's obituary. If they thought I wouldn't fight because I'd never demanded attention before, they were confusing silence with surrender. I pulled up my original employment contract. I had signed it 3 years ago in this very chair. I wanted to see exactly what I had given away and what I hadn't. I kept the original contract in a labeled folder on a cloud drive. No one else had access to something I only did because my sister Marisol once warned me never to trust HR with the final copy. I opened the PDF dated and signed 3 years ago. There it was, plain as daylight, in Section 14.3 Patent Monetization Clause, 2% net profit share upon commercial application if employee is listed as primary or co-inventor. I remembered that clause vividly. It had been one of the only reasons I accepted the job. I wasn't naive enough to think I'd be made rich, but I believed in protecting the work I put my life into. Then I logged into the company's HR portal to compare it with the current record. The document had been updated 2 months ago, no notification, no signature required. The layout was the same, but when I scrolled to the legal section, it skipped. Section 14.2 ended with company training ownership, and the next heading was 14.4. No 14.3 at all. They deleted it. Not revised, not reworded, erased. I texted a screenshot to Marisol and called her. She didn't speak for a few seconds after reading. "That's not just sketchy," she finally said. "That's corporate forgery. If you didn't consent to the change and there's proof of the original clause in writing, that's breach of contract territory." I already knew. But hearing it out loud changed something. It gave the anger shape, structure. I searched my inbox for emails referencing the contract. One popped up. A message from HR 2 years ago confirming receipt of the signed agreement and attaching the original version. I flagged it, backed it up twice, then saved it in a folder I renamed Line 14.3, Proof. If they thought a silent engineer wouldn't know where to look, they hadn't been paying attention. And if they thought a vanish clause was enough to bury me, they clearly didn't know I kept copies of everything, including the emails they'd hoped I'd forget. I logged out of the portal and opened a new tab. It was time to dig deeper than paperwork. I stayed after hours on a Tuesday, long after the janitorial crew had finished their loop, and the automated lights dimmed to half brightness. I brought no badge, just my laptop, a portable drive, and the one thing they underestimated: memory. The decommissioned dev server nicknamed Orion still sat idle on the third floor of the annex building. It was technically offline, but still on the internal network, and my credentials somehow hadn't been revoked. They probably forgot it existed. But I hadn't. Orion was where we ran our earliest test builds, uploaded raw logs, and kept interim backups before the cloud migration. I accessed it through SSH, and after a few dead ends, I found a buried directory in the archive stack labeled simply Navarro, Wemfinal Old. My throat tightened. Inside were 15 files, some zips, some PDFs, some labeled with timestamp hashes that only meant something to the original team, but I knew what to look for. The first document, the converter's blueprint, V.4. My initials were all over the margins, CN next to handwritten voltage calculations and note corrections. Then came a Slack export log containing a full brainstorm session, where Ethan asked me in plain text, "Celia, can we rework the firmware loop? Your last logic patch made the temp curve way smoother." And then, the email. From Brielle. Subject, press coordination. Patent attribution body. Can we reduce inventor names for press optics? Fewer names look stronger on branding materials. Let's simplify. Celia doesn't usually push back. It was dated 4 weeks before the internal filing change. I copied everything, compressed the folder, encrypted it under a custom key phrase, then backed it up twice, one local, one remote. That night, I opened my contacts list and searched for the name Inez Callow. We'd met once at a clean tech symposium in Oakland. She gave a talk titled, "When They Steal Your Brainchild." I remembered her lipstick sharp red and her tagline, "I make corporate theft expensive." I drafted a short message and attached the archive. I hit send. Then I sat in silence, waiting to see what truth could do once it had teeth. Inez called the next morning. I expected formality. Instead, her tone was brisk, like someone flipping open a scalpel drawer. I read everything twice she said. "This isn't misattribution. This is IP theft. No dramatics. No disclaimers. Just a clean diagnosis, like she was confirming a fracture you already felt in your bones." She walked me through the plan. We'd file a provisional patent claim under my name as sole inventor, citing the earliest timestamps, author trails, and Slack logs. The submission would be encrypted, timestamped, and filed through her firm's patent specialist in D.C. No public disclosures. No noise. Not yet. "You understand what this means, right?" she asked. "They'll come for you. Not in emails or meetings, but quietly. They'll revoke access, freeze you out, maybe even spin the narrative. You're the villain now, not the victim. And can you live with that?" I thought about the converter, the way it looked before marketing made it pretty. I thought about my mother's rosary sitting in my desk drawer, the one I didn't take to the funeral. I thought about Brielle's smile, the kind of smile people use when they're already counting on your silence. "I'm not here to live with it," I said. "I'm here to file." We finalized the paperwork that afternoon. It felt clinical. Fast. I signed where Inez pointed. The name on the document was mine. Just mine. By 3:42 p.m., the filing was complete digital trail legal lock and a timestamped chain of evidence that would hold up in a court. Inez reviewed it a final time and nodded once. "Congratulations," she said. "You're now the legal inventor of the tech they're about to roll out to investors, and they don't know it yet." I thanked her, closed the call, and stared at the confirmation email sitting in my inbox. It glowed like a small torch in the dark. They'd tried to erase me, but the paper trail ran backward and I had just taken it all the way home. Now I just needed to choose the moment to let it burn. The subject line read, "You're invited. Project Aurelio Launch Gala." The body of the email was saccharine over-designed and laced with passive aggression. "We welcome all team members to celebrate the journey we've built together." No names, no roles, no mention of invention or authorship, just a calendar link and a dress code. I clicked yes. The night of the gala, Inez arrived at my apartment at exactly 6:10 p.m., her hair pinned tight and her presence sharp enough to draw blood. I wore navy silk, the kind of dress I hadn't put on in years. We didn't speak much in the car. There was nothing left to plan. The ballroom was even gaudier than the merger party. Neon gradients washed over branding banners. Ice sculptures framed the buffet. The board tables shimmered under track lighting, like a stage. Brielle sat at the center, laughing too loudly at something Ethan said, holding court like a queen of stolen gold. We were seated 2 tables away. Dinner began. Speeches were cued. Forks clinked. I waited until the second course. Then I stood, walked over to Brielle's table, and without breaking eye contact, set a red folder beside her wine glass. Her fingers hesitated at the stem. Inside the folder, a formal cease and desist our provisional patent claim, and a full side-by-side breakdown of her edits to my contract, including a highlighted line that skipped straight from section 14.2 to 14.4. She opened the folder. She didn't blink. Her face, always so smooth and composed, lost its color in increments, like a slow software crash. I leaned in slightly and said, "You should read it before dessert." Then I turned and walked back to my seat heels, steady eyes forward. Inez poured herself a glass of wine and smiled without warmth. At the podium, the COO tapped his mic and welcomed everyone. Somewhere behind us, Brielle stood up from her chair. She didn't leave. She didn't speak. She just stood there, folder in hand, staring like she'd just been handed her own obituary. I watched the board shift in their seats and waited for the first crack to spread. The CEO waited until the final toast to take the stage. Leonard Wexler loved dramatics. He paused just long enough for the spotlight to find him cufflinks gleaming a $900 bottle of champagne, cradled in one hand like a newborn innovation. To the future, he declared, his voice booming with manufactured warmth, to our team, our triumph, and to Project Aurelio, which proves that with the right leadership, Inez stood. No hesitation, no announcement. Just the sharp sound of a chair leg dragging against marble and her voice cutting through the clinking of silver. "Before you continue, Mr. Wexler," she said loud and steady, "I'd like to enter a formal statement into the record." The room stilled. "I represent Celia Navarro." She continued, "Effective this week, we filed litigation for patent misappropriation, contractual fraud, and unauthorized commercialization of a protected design. You are currently marketing a disputed asset under false attribution." Gasps broke the surface. Investors leaned in confused. One reporter already had a phone in hand. Wexler stared at her lips, parted mid-toast. I rose quietly and approached the edge of the stage, handing a man from the press pool a sealed envelope inside a certified copy of the provisional patent, notarized and time-stamped. No one stopped me. No one knew how. Wexler tried to speak, but his voice cracked. The champagne cork popped on its own, awkwardly timed, spraying foam down his sleeve like punctuation. His smile vanished. Behind him, Brielle sat motionless, still holding the red folder like it might detonate. The rest of the night blurred into murmurs and questions, glances toward me that flickered between curiosity and fear. By morning, the company's stock had dropped 13%. By noon, the merger talks were officially paused for internal review. By evening, screenshots of internal Slack messages, ones they thought were deleted, had surfaced on Reddit. One showed Ethan joking about taking the credit and keeping the quiet one quiet. I didn't respond to the press calls. I didn't tweet. I didn't need to. Inez was already preparing our next move. The call came at 6:17 a.m. I recognized the number but let it ring twice before answering. Auden Lee, board liaison, polite to the point of suspicion, the kind of voice trained to sound neutral even when the floor's giving out beneath him. "Ms. Navarro," he began, "the board would like to extend an offer for resolution. Privately." He listed it like a menu. My bonus reinstated in full. Inventor credit on all public filings. A promotion to CTO effective immediately with full public recognition of your leadership. I listened without interruption, pen in hand, jotting it down only so I could see how cheap it looked on paper. "Thank you," I said. "But no." A pause. Then see. What I'd like instead, I continued, is a formal licensing agreement, registered under my name independent of your firm with 7% of global revenue tied to any application of my design now or in the future. I heard shuffling as if someone else had entered the room, and a signed public statement I added, from Mr. Wexler, admitting my role in the design, the error in attribution, and a formal apology published through the same channels you used to erase me. Silence stretched for several seconds. "I'll bring that back to the board," Auden finally said. I hung up. By the time Inez arrived at my apartment later that morning, she'd already heard. She dropped her bag on the table and poured herself a coffee like we were old war generals settling terms. "They're bleeding," she said, smiling faintly. "They'll say yes." They did. 3 days later, I signed the licensing deal. My name was reattached this time in bold on the documents that mattered. The apology went live the following week, short lawyerly but public, and real. I read it once, then closed the tab without saving. The CTO position was quietly given to someone else. I didn't care. That title never built the thing. I did. And now it finally said so. Everywhere that counted. 3 weeks later, I unlocked the door to my new office. The space was quiet, modest, just 2 desks, a whiteboard, and a view of the neighborhood coffee shop. No glass walls, no performance banners, no marketing jargon pinned above my head. Just what I needed. Enough space to think. Enough silence to start something real. My R&D license had cleared without issue. The design they once tried to erase was now mine legally and indisputably. Inez called it a precedent. I called it freedom. I'd named the think tank Aurelia Labs not to echo what they stole, but to reclaim what I created. I chose the name. I owned the name. Every few days, the licensing agreement triggered a quiet deposit into my new account. Small at first, then steady. Enough to hire 2 engineers, both women, both sharp, both overlooked where they were before. One afternoon, while organizing circuit boards in our shared storage closet, my phone buzzed. A LinkedIn message. Marisol A., Systems Intern, UC Santa Cruz. "Thank you for being visible. I thought women like us didn't make it to the table. I was going to switch majors. I'm not anymore." I read it twice, then again, and something inside me let go. Not the tension I'd already released that, but the weight of having done it alone, the realization that someone else was watching, that my silence had been broken loud enough to echo. I closed the message and stood by the window watching students cross the street with backpacks and iced coffees, all of them running toward a future they didn't yet know they were building. I didn't smile out of revenge. I smiled because they couldn't take this from me, the patent, the proof, the piece. They had built their stage on the bones of my invention, and when they toasted to their version of success, they never looked beneath the surface to see what held it all up. That was fine. They didn't have to. Let them toast to the future. I wrote the patent that pays for it.